So if Coruscant is the capital of the Star Wars galaxy, how many people are really there? Wait, what's that? 3 trillion? Well, considering Earth's population of 8 billion, that makes Coruscant 430 times the population of our planet, which is pretty crazy, but today I'll be explaining if it would be possible for this many people to live in one area, the population numbers of other Star Wars planets, and whether or not all of the population is concentrated in Galactic City, or if anybody lives beyond that. So first up, what is the official population of Coruscant, and does it change from source to source? Well, in canon, the population is simply stated as being in the trillions, which is probably where the number 3 trillion that most people commonly would give on this topic comes from, as I didn't actually find a source for that other than in The Mandalorian Season 3 Episode 3, which is like that one side quest episode that no one really liked, where they say that the population consists of a trillion. But if we look to legends, there is an exact number of 1 trillion, where one of many sources of this is the Essential Atlas book released in 2009, but Coruscant also had the center coordinates of the galaxy being located at 0, 0, 0, as it was between multiple important hyperspace lanes and was considered the center of the galaxy, or even the capital by some. Even with this said though, the real center of the galaxy was located in the deep, deep core, not Coruscant. I don't think we really have too many planets going on in the deep core, as I'm pretty sure that would be impossible. Also, Coruscant was stated as of its 1 trillion population, having 69 to 78% human population, with 22 to 32 of other species, as it was considered the hearth of humanity, although this doesn't make too much logical sense considering how many other species are in the galaxy, and also how many of the Coruscanti we see in the films are of alien races. It's understandable that the population would be so terrifyingly high, considering that the main metropolis known as Galactic City spread planet-wide, and the Senate District only serves as the capital in a de facto sense. This theoretically means that there were areas of Coruscant that could have been even more densely populated than what we see in the movies. Also, one thing you might be forgetting when you say, oh well, it's just like New York or somewhere but all around the planet, is you forget that Coruscant has 5,127 levels built up from the crust by the Clone Wars era, meaning we are basically seeing these metropolitan areas repeating hundreds of times in the same exact spots. Even with this said, many of the lower underworld levels were either uninhabitable due to being toxic or had little to no desperate life remaining in them. While Coruscant did have 365 days in a year and 24-hour days on their own, as well as a nice temperature similar to Earth, which means it would be undeniably livable even if the once scenic mountain and ocean combo are slowly corrupted into a pollution nightmare. Now another great question is, well, is this even possible to have this many people in one spot, like science-wise? Now a great video I'd recommend is this one about Coruscant by Forbidden Physics, which goes over his theory as to why the population of Coruscant is not unrealistically high, but rather unrealistically low, considering its surface area and the 5,000 levels of the many cities within the planet. The main takeaway as to why his logic is flawed though is that many of the first 2,000 levels are uninhabitable to live on, and therefore the levels thing isn't as big as he's saying it is. Also, we can't forget about locations like the Works and other similar areas on the city planet that are more production and factory based, with things like shipyards and manufacturing of power. This gives reason to believe that there are large patches of the planet with unresidential areas that's mainly only boast workers and construction personnel. And I mean, we really only see this in like Attack of the Clones and Tales of the Jedi when they go to the Works. I mean, it is a very unexplored place because people always talk about how much they want to see the underworld, but we haven't even seen the surface of the planet much more outside of the Senate District, which is pretty sad, and I hope we do explore it more in the future, as it is one of the most interesting planets in the entire galaxy. Now, have you ever wondered what those strange orange-yellow rings are around Coruscant's surface from space? Well, those are simply transport arteries for the multiple different quadrants of the planet, similar to how you can see roads of cities lit up from above at night, but with millions of speeders and spaceships instead. This could suggest that the areas in between these circles are less densely populated. So just a quick break from the video, because I did want to mention we do actually have a new merch drop. I don't know, I think it looks really clean. We updated the design, so we got this nice hat. here is what it looks like, just to see, right? And looking at a picture here, it looks like about 40% of the planet is covered in these circles, meaning that the surface area of Earth is 197 million square miles, and only about 0.9% of that is made up of urban areas, equating to a population of 8 billion. So we can estimate that as Coruscant has a surface area of 172 million square miles, based off of its diameter of 4,700 miles, and 40% instead of 0.9% is covered in urban area. With a little bit of math that I admittedly regret making this video to have to do this, we can figure out that 172 million square miles is 87% of 197 square miles when looking at the surface areas. So basically, if we take that Earth population of 8 billion times 40, we get 320 billion, and 87% of 320 billion is 278 billion, and if we have 5,127 levels, this would suggest 278 billion times 5,127 levels, which means the realistic population of Coruscant would be 1.4253060E plus 15. Wait, what does that mean? Oh yeah, it's 1.425 times 10 to the 15th power, if I remember chemistry correctly. Anyway, to me, that sounds too high, and that's because it is. While as a real number, that would be a 1,400,000,000,000,000 of Coruscanti citizens on this planet.
Impossible. Perhaps the archives are incomplete.
Now remember what I said earlier about some of the levels not being inhabitable? Well, it turns out if we look at the Coruscant levels lore, once we start getting into the levels in the 3000s, they start becoming high poverty and high gang war areas, and keep in mind 5,127, that level, that's the top level, that's the surface where all the skyscrapers and stuff are. So when you're going down in number, it's actually closer to the core, meaning that level 1 would be the surface of Coruscant, or the original surface of Coruscant, as deep as you can go. So we can assume that only about 500 or so levels would actually have this high of a population, that being 278 billion. So going back to square one, let's do 278 billion times 500, but we'll take off a couple hundred, as I doubt any of the levels are as sparsely populated as level 5,127, with those skyscrapers and whatnot, meaning 278 billion times 300, which I'd say is a more reasonable number, gives us, realistically, a population of 83.4 trillion people on the planet of Coruscant. In my opinion, that makes a little more sense. Now, initially, when I heard that the planet has numbers in the trillions as far as the population goes, that already seemed impossible to me, because I guess in my mind, I was just thinking it's like, a really, really huge city, and then everything else just looks like the works, pretty much. I don't know, maybe it is somewhere in between 3 trillion and 83.4 trillion. To end off the video here are the populations of some other Star Wars planets, as well as some fun facts about the planet of Coruscant in general. First up is Naboo, which has a population of 4.5 billion, with 72% Gungan and 27% human, and 1% other, making up the beings on the planet. This is unsurprising as a lush, temperate planet with a massive human city and government, as well as watery swamps filled with Gungan sub-communities of above and below water development. Next up is Tatooine, with a population of only 200,000.
What a piece of junk!
This is made up of 70% human, 5% Jawa, 5% Tusken Raiders, and 20% other, Rhodian, but it did historically have 5 to 10,000 settlers of an unknown species at one point in time. Geonosis, on the other hand, has 100 billion, consisting of mainly Geonosians and 1% other, which makes me wonder what the other is consisting of on Geonosis especially. Mustafar has 15,000 to 20,000, Alderaan has 2 billion, Bespin has 6 million, the bulk of which on Cloud City, of course. Also, Endor has a population of over 30 million Ewoks, and for funsies, Dathomir has a population of only 600 to 8,000 inhabitants. Obviously, that's not counting local creatures, because if you've played Jedi Fallen Order, you would know that that's not true. Now for some fun facts about everyone's favorite Ecumenopolis, which for civilian terms means city plant, is that 1, it used to be covered in mountains and oceans, and actually the last mountain on the planet is located at the Monument Plaza called the Umate, which was part of the Minarai range of mountains and would be touched by people to make them feel more connected to the planet, and for a moment of mindfulness. Also, there were many pest-like species that lived on Coruscant, like the stone mite or even conduit worm, that actually fed off of electricity along the wires of the city and could grow hundreds of meters long, turning the electrical conduits into organs. Let's not also forget about the Duracrete slugs that could grow up to 32 feet or 10 meters long and fed off of Duracrete stone on the lowest levels of Coruscant. But anyway, that's it for this video. You can subscribe if you want to. There's also a join button, which is completely optional, but would truly help me out and the channel if you want to do that. Check out our spring merch drop with new hats and Christian merch as well. We stream almost every Saturday now, so don't miss those either. These types of videos come out every Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I also post shorts on Saturday and Sunday. But yeah, see ya.